Our Top 6 Mystery and Crime Novels You Should Read, Part 2. Hello and welcome back to Deep Dives with Smart Bookworms. I'm Kris Stopher, your virtual book guru host for today's show. Join me, Martina, Amanda, Claire, Megan, and Nathan, my co-presenters and fellow virtual book gurus, as we dive deep into our top 6 mystery and crime novels from authors you love to read. In today's episode, we'll be continuing our deep dive into our top 6 mystery and crime novels you should read. Dirk Gently's Holistic Detective Agency, Douglas Adams. Dirk Gently's Holistic Detective Agency is a bizarre mystery involving a murdered CEO, time travel, a horse in a bathroom, and an alien spaceship. It's about interconnectedness and embracing absurdity. A murder of quality, John le Carre. A murder at a prestigious British boarding school exposes hidden desires. Stella Road, an outsider, is found dead. The truth behind her murder is revealed by George Smiley. Night Watch, Terry Pratchett. A man is thrown back in time and becomes a copper. He must navigate a corrupt system and fight for what's right, while inspiring others. He also teaches a young version of himself. So let's dive deep into today's deep dive. The final 3 of our top 6 mystery and crime novels from authors you love to read.
Okay, so listen, you absolutely have to read this book, Dirk Gently's Holistic Detective Agency by Douglas Adams. Seriously, it's a trip, but in the best way possible. It's like he took all the crazy parts of Hitchhiker's Guide and somehow made them even more wonderfully weird. First off, the characters are completely bonkers. You've got Dirk Gently himself, who's a holistic detective, which basically means he believes everything is connected, even when it makes absolutely no sense. Then there's Richard Macduff, who gets dragged into all of this madness. He's like the normal guy, sort of, amidst all the chaos. He's an ex-student of the Regius Professor of Chronology, aka Reg, who has a memory like a butterfly. There's also an electronic monk, which is a labor-saving device that believes things for you, but it's gone haywire, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. Oh, and a horse. There's a horse involved, which is as perfectly normal as anything else in this book. You also have Gordon Way, a tech company owner who, well, let's just say he has a very unfortunate Thursday night. And how can I forget the romantic poet Samuel Taylor Coleridge makes an appearance too, as does Michael Wenton Weeks, a privileged guy who is obsessed with his magazine. The plot. Well, it's all over the place in the most delightful way. It starts with Richard trying to figure out why his sofa is stuck in his staircase. Then there's a murder, a ghost, a time-traveling professor, and an ancient alien spaceship. It's a detective story, but not like any detective story you've ever read. Adams just throws everything at you and somehow, it all comes together, sort of, in the end. The story jumps around in time and space, and you just have to go along for the ride. It's like trying to follow a dream, a very funny dream. What I really love about this book is the writing. Adams' prose is just so clever and funny. He has this way of making the absurd sound completely logical. He's great at insightful and funny descriptions. His writing shines a weird light on popular culture, with great jabs at our institutions and peculiarities. It's got this Monty Python feel to it, and it's absolutely hilarious. There are so many lines that made me laugh out loud. For instance, the professor is always talking about random things, like how the quality of food varies inversely with the brightness of lighting. It is flat out funny. And get this, it's a mystery, but it's also a parody of one. It's set in the present, but it wanders through the past and the future. It's like H.G. Wells, G.K. Chesterton, and Lewis Carroll all got together to write a detective adventure. It's this wild blend of different genres and ideas, and it's so refreshing. It's a really original and innovative novel. You will not be able to put it down, and it is very fun. It is one of the most delightful, original, intriguing, and innovative novels to appear in a long while. Some of the key themes are the interconnectedness of everything. Dirk's whole detective method revolves around this idea. It's like seemingly random things are all linked in ways you'd never imagine. The absurdity of life. Adams just takes everyday things and twists them until they're completely ridiculous. He shines a weird light on pop culture. The power of belief. The Electric Monk and the Ghost Story both explore the idea of what we choose to believe and why. There is also a lot of witty dialogue. The dialogue is so sharp and funny, and the characters say the most outrageous things with a perfectly straight face. For instance, the professor says the Greek fairy timetables are the only work of true creative imagination this century. The author even makes a point about technology, because the book was written and typeset using an early Apple computer. It's a book that makes you think while you laugh. Adams is so clever and funny that it's easy to overlook. He's also very seriously interested in things. He's got this amazing ability to mix humor with deeper philosophical questions. He makes you think about the nature of reality and time and all those big questions, but he does it with a light touch. You will laugh, but you might also find yourself pondering the meaning of life, the universe, and everything. You could say this is Douglas Adams at his wildest. The book is definitely a bit of a mind-bender, and you have to be prepared to just go with it. Sometimes it's hard to tell what's important and what's not, but that's part of the fun. It is a wonderfully busy mystery. It's like he's daring you to try and make sense of it all, but you just have to enjoy the ride. You also have to pay attention, because he'll throw in details that seem random at first, but then become important later. This is a book you need to read and probably reread to really catch everything. It's not an overstatement to say Adams is one of the great treasures of loony wit. There is a sense you are entering an alternative world that is only slightly more bizarre than the real one. And good news, the ending makes it clear that there will undoubtedly be more heard from Dirk Gently. The book is to be continued, so you know there's even more madness to come. So, yeah, you should absolutely read Dirk Gently's Holistic Detective Agency. It's a wild, hilarious, thought-provoking ride, and you won't regret it. It's a good start for Gently and his companions. It's one of the best things about this grand exercise in philosophy, dementia, and wackiness. You'll love it.
Okay, so you absolutely have to read this book, A Murder of Quality by John le Carré. Seriously, drop whatever you're doing, well, maybe finish that cup of coffee and get a copy. It's not your typical thriller, it's so much more. Imagine a murder mystery set in this really insular, old-fashioned English boarding school called Caen. It's like a world of its own, with its own weird rules and traditions. The story starts with a letter that lands on the desk of Miss Brimley, the editor of a small, religious magazine called The Christian Voice. She gets this desperate plea from a woman, Stella Road, who's convinced her husband is trying to kill her. Now, Miss Brimley is not your average editor. She's got a background in intelligence work from the war, and she takes this letter seriously. She's also got this really great connection with her readers, treating them like her extended family. It's the kind of community that sends Christmas cards and chocolates, and she even keeps a card index of all of them. And that's how we get pulled into this strange world, because Stella Road was a long-time subscriber to The Voice. So, Miss Brimley enlists the help of George Smiley, who is this unassuming, but brilliant guy, also with a background in intelligence. He's like the opposite of a James Bond type. He's described as short, plump, and a bit forgettable looking. But don't let that fool you. He's incredibly observant and insightful, and he's the one who goes to Caen to figure things out.
What makes this book so good is the way le Carré paints a picture of Caen. It's not just a school, it's a microcosm of English society, with all its snobbery and strange customs. The masters, like Fielding and Darcy, are these complex characters, all caught up in their own little power struggles and bizarre traditions. There's Terence Fielding, who is a bit of a cynical but charismatic intellectual, who seems to be constantly at odds with the school and with himself. He's got this whole thing about black candles and is clearly unhappy with his life. And then there's Felix Darcy, who is this stickler for rules and tradition, obsessed with appearances and social niceties. He's described as a sublimated pansy who is self-appointed majordomo of Khan protocol. They are constantly bickering, but somehow also bound together. Then there's Shane Hecht, who is Charles Hecht's wife, and is described as cunning as a snake. She is venomous and has a knack for finding the most cruel things to say. She also has a complicated connection to Charles, whom she hates. The descriptions of Khan are incredible. Le Carré really makes you feel like you're there, wandering through the cloisters and watching the boys in their black gowns. You can picture the serene and beautiful square of medieval houses and the great abbey tower, flat and black against the colourless winter sky. The setting is almost like another character. Even the weather, the snow and the cold, adds to the atmosphere. And the way the story unfolds is just masterful. It's not a fast-paced thriller. It's more of a slow burn, with Smiley carefully gathering clues and piecing together the truth. He has to navigate this really weird social world of Khan and figure out who is telling the truth and who is hiding something. He starts by talking to Fielding and Darcy, who try to minimize what's happened, but their interactions give clues that not everything is as it seems. He also meets the head of Fielding's house, a boy called Perkins, who is described as a musical genius, but a problem in the schoolroom. There are so many interesting side characters too. There's Rigby, the local police inspector, who is a very down-to-earth guy and is trying to make sense of this complicated situation. Smiley's first impression of Rigby was as someone who looks like a mixture of Humpty Dumpty and a Cornish elf, and who is not a fool. He seems competent and trustworthy, but is also limited by his outsider status at Khan. There is also Mr. Cardew, the local minister at the tabernacle, who is also trying to figure out what's going on. He was also one of the few people who knew about Stella's fears and worries. And of course there's Anne and Simon Snow, a young couple working at the school who are just trying to get by. They give Smiley insight into how outsiders at Khan feel. Then there's also Dorothy Darcy, Felix Darcy's sister, who is obsessed with her dogs and with whom Stella had a falling out. And also the rather strange kennels owner, Major Harriman, who has some crucial information about Stella's dog. It turns out that Stella had a complicated life. While she was involved with her church and charity work, helping refugees, she was also quite good at manipulating people and collecting gossip. You see her as a woman who was trying to make a life of her own in a place that didn't really accept her. You find out that Stella had a big argument with Dorothy Darcy because Stella had helped refugees that the Darcys were mistreating. And there's this whole subplot about a boy, Tim Perkins, who is accused of cheating on an exam which is connected to the crime. And the ending, let's just say it's not what you expect. Le Carré doesn't give you easy answers. The book explores the idea of how people can be trapped by their own circumstances and the systems that they live in. It's about the hidden cruelties in everyday life and how even seemingly ordinary people can be capable of terrible things. The story is very much about the idea of who is quality and who is not in English society. Here's why you'll love it. Atmosphere. The setting of Khan is so well developed and adds so much to the story. Characters. They're complex and flawed, not just simple good guys and bad guys. You'll find yourself thinking about them long after you finish the book. Intrigue. The mystery is layered and unfolds gradually, keeping you guessing until the very end. Social commentary. Le Carré is brilliant at satirizing English society and its institutions. Smiley. You'll love this unassuming but brilliant spy. He's the type of character that just grows on you. It's not just a whodunit. It asks bigger questions about truth, morality, and human nature. So yeah, A Murder of Quality is a must-read. It's smart, thought-provoking, and really gets under your skin. Trust me, You won't regret it. Let me know what you think when you've finished it.
Hey, you've got to read this book, Night Watch by Terry Pratchett. Seriously, I know you like a good fantasy, but this is on another level. It's not just about wizards and dragons. It's got this whole gritty, real-world feel to it, even though it's set in a place called Ankh-Morpork. Okay, so imagine the city, right? It's huge, 1 million people crammed into every nook and cranny, and the city itself is practically designed to hide people. It's got 1 billion places to hide and is built of bolt holes. And the Night Watch, they're supposed to keep the peace, but they're just a handful of coppers against the whole crazy city. It's almost comical how outmatched they are, but they really do try their best. The main character, Sam Vims, he's the commander of the Night Watch, and he's such a complex guy. He's been a copper for a long time, spent most of his days working nights, and he's a bit world-weary, but he's also deeply dedicated to his job. He's got this beast inside of him, a kind of rage and darkness that he struggles to control. And things get crazy for him when he gets thrown back in time to when he was just a rookie. It's like he's got to relive a part of his life, but this time he has all the knowledge of who he becomes. I know, it sounds like a lot, but it totally works. He is essentially teaching his younger self about being a good copper. So, young Sam Vimes, this skinny kid with that much Adam's apple, he's a total contrast to the older, more cynical Vimes. He's got a strong sense of justice, and he's so eager to learn. He actually makes a point of polishing his badge. It's great to see the older Vimes having to grapple with this version of himself, trying to make sure he doesn't go down the wrong path and ends up as one of the bad guys. The whole story is really about how the people around you shape who you become, you know. It's like what is mentioned in the book when the older Vimes is thinking about his past and wonders what would happen if he hadn't learned from a decent man. He worries that he would have learned from people like Sergeant Knock and Corporal Quirk and Constable Colin. Oh, and then there's Carcer, who is just a nightmare of a villain. Vimes describes him as being of two minds, but instead of being in conflict, they were in competition. He had demons on both shoulders, urging one another on. He's a brutal and chaotic force, and the book builds up this real sense of dread whenever he appears. It's not just that he's evil, it's that he's smart, and he knows how to twist the system to his advantage. He is incredibly sane because all the rules didn't have to apply to them, not if they didn't want them to. This makes him terrifying. The book has got this fantastic sense of humor, too. Pratchett is amazing at creating funny characters, like Nobby Nobbs, this street urchin who always smells slightly of rotting seaweed, and who ends up becoming Vimes' informant. And the whole idea of the Watch adapting to new technology, like werewolves, is pretty hilarious. Apparently, they have to deal with criminals using aniseed or peppermint scent bombs to cover their tracks. It is absurd, but it makes perfect sense in this world. What's really cool about this book is how it deals with real-world themes, like policing, justice, and the abuse of power. The Watch is like a microcosm of society, with its own bureaucracy, corruption, and its own code. Vimes and his men take an oath to protect and serve, and some of the coppers recognize that they were thinking about peaceful times. There's this whole thing with the unmentionables, a secret police force that just takes people away, and no one is held accountable. It's Vimes who actually starts holding them responsible. He's also always going on about private law, which is basically when the rich and powerful make their own rules. It's like the book is saying we should be really wary of people making their own rules, like those that break it and those that make it. It's not just a story, it's also about how people can take control in the face of injustice. Vimes actually encourages people to build barricades and stand up for themselves, and they start creating the People's Republic of Treacle Mine Road. It is a powerful moment when he explains that the Watchmen are officer of the law, not a soldier of the government. He reminds them that their oath is to protect the innocent, without fear or favor. And at one point, after a particularly tough night, he admits that it was a long, long way from home. Yet, in a treacherous kind of way, this was home. I think that gets to the heart of how he sees his work. The book really makes you think about what it means to be a good person and how to fight for what's right, even when you're outmatched. At the end, you really feel like Vimes is starting to understand the nature of the beast and how to control it. And Vetinari, the patrician, he's this super clever character, and you get the sense he knows more than he lets on. He is very interested in how Vimes works and is a man of resource. The author also makes you question what a statue or memorial means when he has Vimes say, "They fought for those who'd been abandoned, they fought for one another, and they were betrayed. Men like them always are." He wants them to just let them be forever, rather than creating a statue that would inspire new fools to believe they're going to be heroes. There are so many great moments in this book. For example, there's the scene where Vimes is trying to teach young Sam how to walk, explaining how you swing the foot like this so that you can keep going all day. It sounds ridiculous, but it's a good illustration of how Vimes understands the practical realities of being a copper. And then there are things like where Vimes remembers when joining the watch was quite a good career choice and the new recruits are called Sammies. It's also so funny to me how Vimes is so proud that these Sammies are watchmen who could think without moving their lips, who didn't take bribes, much. And the scene when Vimes is figuring out that the safe combination at the station is 4478, but no one seemed to know how to change it. It's these little details that just bring the whole world to life. This is the kind of book that you can keep rereading and find new things to appreciate every time. It's got action, humor, and a lot of depth. You know how we always talk about books that make you think? Well, this is one of those books. I know you'll love it. Let me know when you've read it so we can talk about it.
And there you have it. 6 incredible books by 6 iconic authors. They Thought I Was Dead tells the story of Sandy, wife of Detective Roy Grace, who spirals into debt and a dangerous double life. She borrows money from a loan shark, becomes entangled with a drug dealer, and fakes her death to escape. The book jumps between timelines, revealing Sandy's desperate attempts to disappear and the consequences of her choices. She moves to Jersey, becomes addicted to drugs, and is forced to work for her abusive boyfriend. Ultimately, Sandy returns to England, facing her past, including her old life and her husband, Roy. It's a wild ride with shocking twists and turns that will leave you questioning everything. In Agatha Christie's Sad Cypress, Eleanor Carlyle is on trial for murder, accused of poisoning Mary Gerard. The story jumps back to reveal a tangled web of jealousy and suspicion at her aunt's estate. An anonymous letter, a broken engagement, and a secret inheritance all point to Eleanor as the killer. But nothing is as it seems. As Hercule Poirot investigates, he uncovers a shocking truth involving a secret past and hidden motives. Can Poirot solve the puzzle before it's too late? Find out who the real killer is in this twisty thriller. Ever wondered what would happen if a reality TV show went horribly wrong? Dead Famous plunges you into house arrest, where 10 fame-hungry strangers are under constant camera surveillance. But then, one of them gets murdered. An old-school detective, Coleridge, is forced to wade through endless footage to find the killer. The show manipulates everything for ratings, making heroes and villains out of ordinary people. The book is a wild ride of dark humor and unexpected twists. It's a satire of reality TV culture, with a shocking murder mystery at its heart. You'll be guessing until the very end. Get ready for a wild ride. Douglas Adams' Dirk Gently's holistic detective agency is a hilarious, mind-bending mystery. Meet Dirk Gently, a detective who believes everything is connected. Richard Macduff gets pulled into a chaotic case involving a murder, a time-traveling professor, and a malfunctioning electronic monk. Expect the unexpected as the story jumps through time, with absurd situations and witty dialogue. There's even a horse. It's a blend of sci-fi, mystery, and comedy with a touch of philosophy. It's flat-out funny and totally bonkers, but also insightful. You will laugh, but you might also find yourself pondering the meaning of life. A disturbing letter to a religious journal about a potential murder draws George Smiley into an investigation at the elite Khan school. When the letter writer, Stella Rhode, is killed, Smiley uncovers hidden tensions among the staff. Initially, suspicion falls on Terence Fielding, a housemaster, but Smiley discovers the true killer is Stella's husband, Stanley Rhode. Rhode, driven by his wife's manipulation and scorn of his social climbing at the school, is revealed to be the murderer. Time-traveling cop, Commander Vimes gets thrown into his past, a rookie again, in the chaotic city of Ankh-Morpork. He's got to guide his younger self while stopping a brutal villain caster. It's a fight for the soul of the city, as the Night Watch faces corruption and a secret police force. Expect gritty action, dark humor, and a complex look at policing and justice. Vimes leads a rebellion, showing that even ordinary people can fight back. It's a battle against injustice, with a touch of time travel paradox and a lot of heart. Plus, watch out for Nobby Nobbs, the street urchin. Have you read any? If so, drop a comment below and let us know what you thought. And if you haven't, do they sound like a must-read for you? If you enjoyed today's deep dive, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe for more book deep dives, and share this video with your fellow book lovers. Don't forget that full in-depth reviews are available from our free 100 mystery and crime novels you should have read. See the link in the description below to grab your copy today. And until next time on Deep Dive with Smart Bookworms, keep reading, keep growing, and we'll see you in the next one.